Hi, welcome back
Hi.
to TORAH-MATTERS at home. In today's video, we'll be talking about Parashat Toldot. That is from Genesis chapter 25, from verse 19, up to Genesis chapter 28, verse 9. And it's about the story of Esau and Jacob, and then the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son.
Welcome. Shalom to you over there. Thank you again for joining us. We are very super excited to be here. Told us about generations. It's talking about the generations of the children of Isaac, but also talk about other generations which we will be seeing. The story, briefly, is about Esau and Jacob, how Esau was born, how Jacob, the genealogy, how the struggle that was going between Esau and Jacob in the womb, and how what Yahweh eventually told Rebekah, all the way to the confirming of the covenant with Isaac, moving down to how Isaac was blessed. Isaac was blessed by Adonai, by Yahweh, and then the covenant with Abimelech, down to the tricksting of Jacob, and then moving down all the way to how Jacob eventually was sent away to go and meet Laban. So we are in for a very good time and see how this is applicable to our lives. This is applicable to spiritual and both physical as a family. One thing for us to start with, why really the importance of this Toldot, which means generation. When we read very well, we realize that there are various generations being mentioned here. There's a generation of Isaac, there's a generation of Jacob that we eventually will begin to find out how what will happen. But the connection is because it's leading us to eventually get to the main generations that will be mentioned in Matthew chapter 1, which is the generations of Yeshua, the Son of God, which is the one that actually eventually introduced us to become sons and children of Yahweh himself. Do you have something you want to say?
Okay, there's a bit of Isaac. When Rebekah was barren for 20 years, then Isaac interceded on her behalf, and she was able to conceive. So I see here Isaac as a prayerful man who interceded for the wife. So sometimes maybe a family might be going through this kind of barrenness, like no children, and usually the burden is placed on the woman. But here we see actually Isaac took up the burden and interceded for the wife, and Yahweh had his prayers, and they got twins. So I'm calling upon the men to also take up that burden and intercede for your wives in case you have a challenge in that matter.
Which is quite important in that it shows that Isaac was a person of prayer. He was, beside the fact that he was a person of prayer, he actually held on to his prayer because it took like more than 20 years to have this child. But let's start to have two children. Thank you. So let's start. Verse 19 says that these are the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took for himself Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean from Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban, the Aramean, to be his wife. Isaac prayed to Adonai on behalf of his wife because his wife Rebekah became pregnant. Now the big question is, why the emphasis to say that these are the genealogy of Isaac? One, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old. Why this repetition? This repetition actually is very important in that it introduces us to the fact that there was a debate, and Isaac the honor now was on Isaac, or the writer, to be able to emphasize that this son was not Abimelech's son. Some people say that Isaac was Abimelech's son. Some people say that Isaac was a son from somebody else, one of the king who must have taken a captive. But the Bible here is emphasizing that these are the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son, and Abraham fathered Isaac. It's quite important for us to know, for us, for example, is that these days, a lot of persons are actually arguing the genealogy of people who are actually righteous. David, tradition has it that Jesse did not believe that David was his own child, and that's the reason why when the prophet Samuel came, he didn't invite him alongside. The same way also, people in Yeshua's time were arguing and saying that Yeshua was actually born out of wedlock. And the devil today, till today, is trying as much as possible, because for him is actually the son of God, and they are actually arguing, and the devil is trying his best possible way to be able to diffuse the genealogy. As a matter of fact, there's a book that somebody wrote where they were actually claiming that Yeshua was actually the son of a Roman soldier. So this is the lie of the devil, and this is actually where the focus is, where people are actually unable to get to know the genealogy of the son of Yahweh himself. So let's for us, it's also a prayer to be able to pray continuously so that people will be able to recognize who Yeshua is. Then the second question also becomes, we that are actually professing to be sons of Yahweh, can that boldness also be said of us, that Yahweh is the one that's fathering us based on our attitude? When of Abraham, the angel did say that, shall I hide anything from Abraham, knowing that he's going to even lead his own children to the right path? Are we also people who are being led according to that leadership of Yahweh himself? So that's a few questions for us to probably have to look into. Do you have something to say?
Then we go on maybe the next one,
which is the struggle in the womb.
Rebekah, yes.
Okay.
The struggle, the children struggling in the womb, and she had to ask, to actually pray. This time around, we see her now praying, because the first time it was Isaac that prayed. Now we see her praying, and Yahweh was able to, and God told her what was going on, and so she got into the secret of the future, because she was told that 2 nations, that's verse 23, and Yahweh said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 people shall be separated from your body, and 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. So she was already told. I guess that's why she did what she did, as we shall see later. So here we see a prayerful woman and mother.
Yeah, so quite interesting. Pregnancy is actually a trying moment. I remember when my wife was pregnant, especially with our first son. It was a school we've never been to. It was full of prayer. So God has been there even when the medical doctor is not there. Let's learn to put things to God in prayers. Sad enough, I like the example actually of Isaac, who actually prayed for his wife, because a lot of, in our tradition, especially our African tradition, when 5 years someone really does not have a child, it's either the in-laws that are coming to say, when are we having our baby, when am I having my grandbaby, and then they start putting pressure on the man or the woman, sometimes even start thinking and insulting the person in the society. But here Isaac, for 20 years, kept praying until eventually his prayer was answered. And when Mommy Rebekah had the baby in her womb, she also took her time to go and find out what she was carrying. So which is very, very important for us to notice. And then the time of birth came, twins came, and then the children were named. One was called Esau, taken by the heel, and the other one was called Jacob. And then one was a mild man, remaining in tents. What that means is that when the Bible speaks of someone remaining in tent, it means that somebody who actually spent time studying the Torah, and then the other person was a man of the field who had more pleasure in hunting, and the next closest person who was a hunter was also Nimrod. So this brings us to one thing, that we may have a profession, but if it goes outside us understanding the scripture, us spending time with Yahweh, then it really does not matter, because then in that case we are not sitting down. Remember the story of Yeshua. People came to him and said that your brothers and your mothers are looking after him. They said, who are my brothers and mothers? It is those people who are actually sitting down listening to me. So let's take time, whatever thing we do, to sit in front of study the Torah, and then we'll be able now to be able to, because the Bible says that the name of Yahweh is a strong tower, and for us to be able to be in that strong tower, that means we are in His presence, in His premises, and 1 hour in His presence is actually very useful.
Actually, even it is said that Jacob used to spend time with Abraham, because Abraham was still alive, and Abraham was teaching him the Torah. So that is why the covenant actually got passed on to him, because he was a tent dweller, spending time studying the Torah. So that's why the covenant was entrusted to Jacob.
Great. Okay.
Then we see the lentils.
Then the lentils. Do you have something to say about that?
Okay, so now, then the other thing is, so Esau came out first as the firstborn, and then Jacob was the secondborn. But now, according to even science, the twins, the first one that comes out is actually the lastborn. Because when you think about it, the one that gets in first, that's the firstborn, and that's the one that will come, the first seed, and that's the one that will come out last. Because in the womb, there's enter in the second one, and that's how they will stay. So then the one who comes out first is actually the lastborn. So let's sort that out now. Then we see that. So in from verse 27, and the boys grew up, and Esau became a man knowing how to hunt, and a man of the field, while Jacob was a complete man dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his wild game, while Rebekah loved Jacob. And Jacob cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, please feed me with that same red stew, for I am weary. That's why his name was called Edom. But Jacob said, sell me your birthright today. And Esau said, look, I am going to die, so why should I have birthright? Then Jacob said, swear to me today. And he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Jacob then gave Esau bread and stew of lentils, and he ate and drank, and rose up and left. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Okay, so now from this, we see that like the birthright swapped just for a bowl of lentil stew and bread. Now to apply it in the days, like in the end times, this lentils, this bowl of food, that is the time. That's how people are going to say their birthright, their spiritual birthright, for a plate of food, because during the tribulation, there's going to be famine, like severe famine, and people are going to be so tested to the point of giving out their birthright in their heritage in God, and then they will be given. It will be like, if you want a plate of food and water, then you have to take the mark of the beast. And once you take the mark of the beast, you cannot, you've sold your birthright forever, as in direct to hell. So that is despising your birthright. So do not sell your birthright for a plate of food, because at that time, during tribulation, food is going to be like the most precious thing. So people are going to be tested for what? As in at that point, because of food, and hunger is serious. So please, if you get to that level, don't give up. Don't despise your birthright in God, because it's final, it's eternal. That's what happened to who? Though this one is a different kind of story, but it kind of applies.
Yeah.
So don't Esau was a man who was giving into pleasure, like he was tempted by what he can see, like feeding the flesh. So, and those are temptations we face today. We should not feed the flesh because it will destroy our eternal value. So the flesh can be, maybe you are a married woman or a married man, and then you see somebody and then you get attracted, your someone else who's not your spouse, and then get tempted. That's feeding to the flesh. So, and that one can damage your eternal life and family. So don't give in to that kind of thing.
Yeah. So then we will move on to see how Isaac, there was a famine in the land, and then just the same type of famine that happened in Abraham's days, father's days. And so Isaac went to meet Abimelech, and then Yahweh appeared to him and said, don't go down to Egypt, don't behave like your father, stay in the land. And then eventually he was afraid to announce that that was his wife, and then we saw what happened there. That eventually, because he was afraid of what the men were going to do to him, but eventually he was caught red-handed. He was caressing with his wife, and then Abimelech came and said, why do you have to do that? I guess Abimelech already had experience from what happened between him and Abraham earlier on. So the lesson there is that some things happen from generation to generation. I mean, they are almost the same things, that some patterns that repeat themselves, the same pattern of famine that happened, but likelihood to go to Egypt was also there. But Yahweh quickly came to him. So unlike Abraham, he didn't go down to Egypt. What that tells us that sometimes we see some pattern repeating themselves in our family lineage, and sometimes we are likely to do the same thing. But this calls us that even though from generation to generation things may happen in the family pattern, we have the ability to be able to stop certain things, and the way for us to stop it is by listening to the voice of Yahweh. It's that important, so that we don't repeat what our parents have done. So in this case now, he didn't go down to Egypt. He didn't come back with a certain Hagar. He didn't come back. He just stayed in the land, and then Yahweh prospered him, and he produced even 100-fold. So it's quite important. The second thing is that sometimes it's very challenging for people to be able to just stick to some family values or recognize some things in the family just because they want to compromise themselves. But we are learning that if we really trust in Yahweh, we're able to keep every member of the family safe. So that's just briefly what I have for this one. And that no matter how we try to hide the truth, there's always a point where it's being discovered. So we better stay with the truth. What's your identity? Are you a bride of the Messiah, or do you allow yourself to be passed for somebody else? Do you allow yourself to be passed as a member of this system? The truth will always come. There's a day when they'll recognize you, so you better stay in your lane. Peter denied Joshua, and he said you didn't know him, and I said, but even your speech deny you. So let's stay firm to our conviction. Let's not deny our Messiah. Let's not deny our calling. Let's not deny what Yahweh has given us. So briefly, that's just what I want to say there. Do you have something?
Okay, then there's a bit of where Yahweh confirmed his covenant. The covenant he made with Abraham, now he's confirming it with Isaac in verse 5. And he says that because Abraham obeyed my voice and guarded my charge, my commands, my law, and my Torah. So it's important for us as children of Abraham to also to guard Yahweh's commandments, to listen to his voice, because he will direct our path, and then to keep his laws and his Torah. Very, very important. That's the light. The Torah is light. And of course Yahusha is the living Torah.
Then because he obeyed Yahweh, because he dwelt in the land, Yahweh made him to prosper, and the Philistine envied him. Its temptation will come because we believe in Yahweh, so we have to just keep following divine direction. So in this point now, Abimelech came and said, go away from us. So there's a time where we have, and Isaac dug again the well of water that his father has dug. And so here again, Isaac, we see something in Isaac. Isaac was not the type of leader that will take over a position and then start discarding what other person's predecessors have done. He was not the type of leader that will come up and forget the image that his father had built. So he was trying as much as possible to be able to build upon the foundation of his father. But even though then people were trying to just be against him, we have a foundation that Yeshua, our Messiah, has built. He is built because it's the foundation that his father sent him, which is our father has also sent for us to be able to do. That one that he was able to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane. And the devil is trying as much as possible to be able to just destroy it. We have to stand firm in our standard. We have to keep going until eventually Yahweh will open doors for us, irrespective of the challenges that we face in life. Let's keep doing what we know how to do. Let's keep doing the things for the glory of Yahweh. Even though we get a demotion, even though we get sacked from where we are, even though we get driven from where we are, there's definitely a point of breakthrough that is coming for us. Even if it's not on this earth, according to faith, it's going to be in the by and by. You have something?
No, I'm continuing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then we have the covenant now. So Abimelech eventually recognized that he was actually at fault, and he came and then he was apologizing, and then after that, we also see he made a feast, and when he made the feast, and then we go back again to Esau. So Esau took a wife, and another Hittite wife, a Bathsheba and Elon and Eta, and they caused bitterness to the spirit of Isaac and Rebekah. Maybe because they were idolatrous. So the type of wife you marry can have an impact. So sometimes people usually say, oh, for a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife. But from what we've just read, the in-laws are very important also in our own life. So as a wife, you are supposed to try and then also have some respect for the in-laws. As a husband, you're supposed to have respect for the in-laws because they are your parents also. So from this is what I've just gathered from this also. So we need to understand that. Then what happened after that? There was a trick sting, and but it came to pass that Isaac grew old and his eyes were dim; he could not see. So he called his elder son and said to bring him some venison. So then Rebekah heard what was happening, and Rebekah called her own son and said, go and do this. This is what I heard your father say, and then you'll be blessed. When we see Genesis chapter 27, we see verse 14. The Bible there says that so he, meaning that Jacob, went and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared a delicious meal that his father would love. Why does the Bible use the verb went? Every letter, every verb actually is very important in the Bible. So went here means that if we compare the verb went that is being used, and also compare Abraham's attitude when the visitors came, let me even look at it. It says that Abraham ran to get the kid. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, quick, knead the measure of fine flour and prepare them. Then, yes, that's the promised son. Genesis 18. So, then to the herd, Abraham ran and took a young fox, tender and good, and he gave it to a servant who prepared it quickly.
A young what?
A young ox.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So, and then when we look at this very verb, yes, that means that Jacob was actually not willing to do that because he was a righteous person, and for him, he didn't feel like cheating. But because his mother was pressing on him, and also his mother has actually stood in to be able to just take the curse if the plan backfires, so he had to go, and he went slowly, reluctantly, to be able to do what he did. Then, when we also go further, we see how the next process is how he came and how he was even not too sure when he went to his father he went to him, then he came to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "I am here. Who are you, my son?" Then Jacob said to his father, "I am your firstborn Esau. I have done just what you've said to me. Sit up, please, and eat." So it was as compared to when we eventually see, what's his name? Esau's Esau. So as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, I'm reading from verse 30, and Jacob had just gone out of his tent with his presence, then Esau's brother came from his hunting. Then he also prepared a delicious meal, and his father, then he also prepared a delicious meal and brought it to his father, and he said to his father, "Let my father get up and eat of his son's wild game, that your soul may bless me." So he was very...
Didn't have to explain
he didn't have to explain
himself.
himself.
Your firstborn.
So, tradition also believed that when that Isaac was a very strong-headed person, because that was the reason when he realized after he has blessed, he said he has blessed, and that he was not going to go back to it, despite the fact that this son was trying to just make some tantrum, crying on his head. And that Rebekah believed that because he was a strong-headed person, so that's why she didn't tell him what Yahweh told about the children. So yes, because she realized that, so she left it to herself and then she kept it to herself. That's what traditions believe.
Even the bit of him being blind,
yeah,
that it was actually a divine kind of plan, so that to make sure that this plan happens, this thing happens in the future. So that's why, like, Yahweh made him blind, so he will not be able to see with child, because he really loved Esau. But then it's like Isaac had, like at that point, he was like spiritually blind.
Yes.
Because already Abraham had already seen that Jacob was the one who was teaching him Torah and everything. The mother already knew. So, but for him, he was just bent to, because of the food that Esau used to give him.
Yeah.
So he was kind of like, he had diverted. So that's why he had to become blind, so that, and it is actually in tradition, in the books of the apocryphal books, when Jacob returned later, when he returned from Laban, that Isaac's eyes actually opened briefly, and he was able to see him and his children, to see Judah and to see Levi. Yes, so that blindness was on purpose. So certain things happen for a reason,
Yeah. Once I was talking to somebody. I told the person that sometimes things happen in our families, or even to our parents for a certain reason, or even to us for a certain reason, or to children for a certain reason. Because, for example, some people will not have gotten to a certain positions in their life if they are staying with their parents, because their parents probably were like very, very, very spoiled parents, and because they needed to go through a certain training in life to be able to become who they ought to become. So some people would not have married some people if their parents were still alive, because their parents were probably that hard driving. But like adding to what my wife had just said also, most of us are like Isaac. We are so spiritually, we are so carried by what we are seeing that we forget to really understand the spiritual things happening. So a lot of us Christians these days actually lost that spiritual sensitivity. And so he needed to be blind to be able to actually connect with the divine. And let us not become like that. Let us not allow things to happen to us before we start connecting to God. Let us not allow calamities to overtake us before we start looking back to God. Some of us, as soon as it's well with us, everything is doing well, we just forget really how to really understand the things of the Spirit. We become so carnally minded. So I pray that we don't get to that sin, because from what we read, especially when he was saying that the smell of my son, like that of the smell which Yahweh has blessed, it's like he eventually entered into a sense where it is believed that he was smelling the Garden of Eden itself. He was beginning to see the future as how the future was going to be linked to Jacob. And that was actually one of the reasons why when his son, the other son came, he trembled because he realized that, oh, this one actually is the one that actually had a nice smell, but I was being so carried by what I was seeing that I wasn't able to smell him appropriately. So, dear parents, please let us learn to love children based on their spiritual directions, not because of what we think we are getting from them. Quite important for us.
Then also for women, we can see Rebekah here. She tapped into her divine sense. And women are very, very sensitive. We see ahead, like things that will happen ahead. You see your child and you know, okay, this is what might happen. Then you channel your child accordingly. So it's very important for us to be spiritually tuned to the divine, so that we know, so that we can help our husbands and our children. Because now you see here, Rebekah was able to to change the whole
narrative.
She changed the whole narrative and rescued the covenant, because otherwise the covenant was going to go to Esau, who was a womanizer, who didn't care. He's busy getting different women, and the women are idolaters and all that. So there's no way Yahweh could allow that, and he used the woman to change that, who saw what was in the sun, and then they prepared. So as women, let's be very, very sensitive.
Great. And we will be getting to the last bit, which is Isaac blessing Jacob and asking him to go and get a wife from from his own mother's side, because he really did not like the Canaanite woman, and that was based on also input from Rebekah again. And then so he left, and he listened to his father Isaac and to his mother, and went towards Padan Aram. The Bible says that we should obey our parents, because that's where long life and prosperity, that's where long life actually is. So if you want to live long, you need to honor them. And then who you marry is also important. Again, let's just put that across. They are non-negotiable. I mentioned that in the last video we had. They are non-negotiable. That person must be God-fearing, must love Yahweh, must have certain foundations that we are not willing to actually. If the person's stand for Yeshua is a deviating one, is not correct, then that person is also a no-go area. So those are the things we just looked into. Mawab, do you have any other?
Yeah, we can see when you really get into this story, before we go to Laban, when you get into the head of Rebekah, if you're a woman watching, you know what I'm saying. Now, with all the things that she planned, she had already got us. She already knew what to do. She already knew that Isaac doesn't like Canaanite women. So she had already finished the whole plan, saying that, okay, you go do it. And then she already knew she was going to send the child to Laban, because she knew how Esau was going to react. There was going to be so she was not taken by shock at all these things that were happening. And then she knew that, okay, so if you notice,
she's giving you a woman's secret.
Yes, if you notice, she said, there's somewhere towards the end where it became as if it was Isaac's idea for him to send a child to Laban. Yet it was her idea. You see, so she was a very intelligent woman.
Is that what you've been doing?
She was a very intelligent woman. So, sometimes we really women are we are actually closer to God. It's true. We're actually closer to God. That's why we are created last. So we're dun, 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 dun. Yeah, we're closer. We are closer to God. That's why we're created last. So we connect faster. So she already knew. She knew what to do. But now it became as if it was Isaac's idea. I think she was like, yeah, I got it. So anyway, so
I got you. Next time you come, I'll just ask you, are you trying to make it seem like my idea or your idea?
And then, then Then Isaac sent him away and blessed him, added a blessing even after lying, added a blessing he did. We don't see him, like saying, why did you do this? No.
Yeah, that shows, I mean,
I think he kind of
Isaac
woke up.
and his character also.
What character?
The Isaac, isn't he? Because he knew what he has done was right, so he didn't want to compromise that.
Yes. So. And by the way, apparently that it's like Abraham. That time of the lentil stew it's like Abraham. That's the day he died.
Is it?
On that day of it's like that's when they make lentil stew or something. I need to find that Abraham had died. So on that day, the covenant got swapped. Like the bit of where Esau now despised his birthright, and then so it was kind of like in the spiritual whatever it got swapped. At that point, something like that. Yeah.
Yes, and then there was actually something said there that that actually there were two now. So the first that of the lentil stew was a different blessing. Was a birthright. Was a birthright.
Yeah.
But one could have the birthright without having the blessing.
Okay.
So now, so what he did now, so he got now, so he got the two of them. So he got the birthright. So Jacob actually was relaxed. No, Esau was relaxing that I knew that, okay, even if you take the birthright, I'll get the blessing. And once you have the blessings, you can now even start influencing that somebody. So you got both of them at the same time. Thank you so much for watching. So thank you so much for watching. So what we have just learned is that generations, Yahweh is responsible. Yahweh is taking care of generations, and then He has been watching over generations. But what we do actually affect the generation, the blessings that we are going to have in our generations. Things repeat themselves in our families, but we need to stand firm and then listen to the voice of Yahweh so that we can make a difference and then lead and then start a new line of divine narratives in our own life. Obeying our parents is very important, and it's also important for parents to be very attentive to the voice of Yahweh and then also support their children in becoming what Yahweh asks them to be. If we don't, what will happen is that some calamity may happen to us to make the will of Yahweh come to pass, because no one can stand against Yahweh. So it's quite important for us to take that into consideration with a very, very, very scary and reverence to Yahweh, so that we will allow our children and ourselves to be in the will of Yahweh. What else again do I need to learn from? We also need to add to that?
Oh, there's nothing that happens by mistake.
Nothing that happened by mistake. So, shalom. God bless you.
Thank you for watching.
And thank you for watching.